Despite the difficulties that I had in February setting up in the giveaway journal, March turned out to be much easier. For this month, I decided to go with a baking and sweet treats theme using these washi stickers, but the layout we're working on here is the monthly dashboard. If you haven't heard about the giveaway journal, this was a journal that I set up back in November, so if you're thinking, Jess, isn't it a little bit early to set up for March? We just started February. Well, yes, technically, in my personal journal, setting up for March right now wouldn't really work. I like to kind of build things as I go, take it day by day, especially where my daily logs are concerned. But in terms of this journal, I wanted it to get to our giveaway winner before the end of 2024, so it had to be set up a decent amount in advance. In setting up these layouts, I've tried to be quite flexible with how they can be used, so not a lot of sections get very specific information types or uses that they need to be used for, and we can see that flexibility on the dashboard here. We do have 3 separate sections, but I haven't specified what they need to be used for. If I was going to use a layout like this, I'd probably think about it in terms of different areas of my life, so maybe tasks related to work, tasks related to the house and like home maintenance, and then tasks related to personal projects or goals. You could also think about this in terms of spans of time, so maybe it's like stuff going on in the first third of the month, the second third, the third third, or it could be related to 3 specific projects, maybe actions and tasks related to goals 1, 2, and 3. Because I didn't know ahead of time who this journal was going to end up with, I didn't want to dictate what they used it for. That's one of the benefits of bullet journaling, getting to use it for what we need to use it for and leaving out stuff that isn't going to be useful for us. The washi stickers made this one nice and simple to set up in a way that still looks visually appealing, so from first touch of the pen to the final touches, this one took about 6.5 minutes. That time, of course, doesn't include idea generation time, but on the right-hand side, this is where we're setting up the cover page. This one actually only took 3.5 minutes, which is pretty good for a cover page, at least by my standards. Oftentimes, a cover page is where I do try and be a little bit more decorative, maybe spend a little bit more time and effort there to make the introduction of the month just nice to look at. But because of the stickers, it was really just slap them down in the corners, write in a title, draw in the border, and we're done. One of the things that I in particular tried to do in the giveaway journal when it came to the cover pages for each month was make each subsequent month feel different. In February, we had a panel of decoration running down the right-hand side. In January, we had kind of a wave design made out of all of these little pieces from the PET stickers I was using. Whereas in this month, I've kind of focused the decoration in each of 2 corners, and then just put in a simple title in the middle of the page. Flipping over, on this spread we'll be setting up the monthly log, but before that, I wanted to let you know about our sponsor for today's video, Typhosi. Typhosi are the makers of beautiful notebooks, and what I really love most about them is that there's definitely something for everyone. If you prefer 160 GSM dot grid bright white paper, just like me, then they have an absolutely gorgeous range of designs, including full design covers or the more simplistic icon style, but they also have options that are 100 GSM for that lightweight feel, and also really gorgeous notebooks with lined pages too, if you're more into that long form journaling. Typhosi generously offered to send me the entire of their new gold vintage dot grid notebook range, which have such beautiful covers, and I love that they come in such a range of colours as well. If you're on the hunt for your next notebook, or if you're just looking for an excuse to add another one to your collection, then Typhosi is definitely worth checking out. You can get 10% off your order with the code JashiiCorrin10 at checkout. Just head over to Typhosi to explore their range. Thank you to Typhosi for sponsoring today's video, and now we're on to the monthly log. For the line work on the calendar, I used 2 different colours of Tombow dual brush marker, one for where the bulk writing space is going to be for adding in any events or tasks, and then a slightly darker one for a header for each of those boxes. It's on that line in particular that I'm going to be writing in the number for each of the days on the calendar, and remembering to pick up the new colour was certainly something that challenged me, but I am pleased to announce that I didn't make any stuff-ups when doing the line work. That was definitely not the case for February, so it felt very good to not make as many mistakes in this one. That's the thing about making a journal for someone else, the pressure feels like it's on a little bit more. Like you don't want to gift something to someone that has all of these mistakes and thus mistake fixes in it. You effectively want it to be perfect, even though we know that things can't be perfect. Regardless though, I was very pleased that I didn't make any mistakes on this calendar. One of the things that I've been trying my hand at in this journal is also not using my ruler as much. I am a big fan of my ruler, I love a straight line, but using a ruler oftentimes makes the process take a little bit longer, and in trying to set up a full 6 months in this journal in the span of like a week, I was using any time-saving tactic that I could. Rather than just freehanding the lines altogether though, because that would still be very uncomfortable for me, I decided to do something else that was uncomfortable and do this kind of broken line style. In this style, the line is intentionally broken when going either up or down the page or side to side, and because each of those segments is considerably shorter than the full length or width of the page, it means that keeping it relatively straight doesn't have to be done for as long, so it isn't quite as difficult. Also, if there is any kind of wiggliness throughout the line work, it kind of feels more intentional and adds a little bit of character to the layout, I feel. And I also thought that the broken line style was a little bit softer and thus matched better with the decoration that I was using. I'd definitely be keen to try using it in my own personal journal as well at some stage. I haven't quite worked myself up to that just yet, but with doing practice of it in this notebook, I'm feeling a little bit more confident and feeling like I might be able to tackle it in future. Another thing that I did to make setting up the giveaway journal easier for myself is just using the same style of lettering for all of the headers throughout the entire thing. This is my go-to header style when it comes to journaling, mainly because I've done enough practice with it now that it kind of comes second nature to me. It is definitely not my regular handwriting by any stretch of the imagination, but because I've gotten enough practice with it, it doesn't feel too unnatural to do. In terms of timing, from first to final touches of the pen, the monthly log took about 12.5 minutes, but now it's time to flip on over to our keeping track page. This is effectively a habit tracker page, and to set it up I'm going to be using these little mini calendar printables from my shop, but I like to call it a keeping track of page rather than a habit tracker, just in case that kind of terminology didn't really resonate with our giveaway winner. For instance, I typically call layouts like this routine trackers because oftentimes they're not habits yet, they're just routines that I'm trying to build, or aspects of routines that I'm trying to build. So calling them a habit tracker feels like a bit of a misnomer for me. By calling it keeping track, then that makes sense with what the layout is actually for. A whole bunch of mini trackers. The idea behind this one is that there are 8 mini calendars that can be used to keep track of 8 different things, and for each day that the thing is successfully completed, they just color in the little box relevant to that day of the month, or if it doesn't happen, possibly leaving it blank or filling it in with a different color. I didn't want to specify what colors or symbols or anything like that should be used on here, just in case the materials I used weren't available to the giveaway winner. It wouldn't be so great for me to go and dictate the specific color or shade they're supposed to use to say yes it happened or no it didn't if they don't actually have those pens. In amongst each of the little calendars though, I just put in some more of those stickers for decoration. I know I already mentioned it, but I really appreciate stickers like this for just quick and simple decorative pieces. I ended up using 2 separate rolls of tape to get enough variation in the decorative pieces I used, because if I had have just used one, there would have been a lot of repeated elements. But I think the style of the art on them is really cute. You'll see on the mini calendars themselves that there's a little box sitting on the left-hand upper corner. That one is actually for the 31st day of March, and this is typically the style that I will use if I'm trying to fit a calendar within 5 lines when it actually goes across 6 weeks. When it comes to the options we have available in the shop, we do also have the 6-week version of this. It's just that with the space I was using, I needed to go with the 5-line option. The keeping track of page took about 5.5 minutes to set up though, and then we're on to the right hand side for the 1 line a day layout. When it comes to watching journal content online, of which I watch a lot, the mindset that I always come into videos with is, how can I make this work for me? Or effectively, which parts of this setup can I utilize in my own journal, even if just by tweaking it or changing it, making it so that the focus of the layout is a little bit different, switching up decorative styles or anything like that. And I definitely hope that people also approach my videos in that way. So for instance, I'm calling this layout a 1 line a day page, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the structure itself would have to be used in that way. For instance, if we kept everything else the same on the layout and just took off the header, maybe took out the numbers running down the side, how could this layout be used for something different? If you were keeping the numbers in, then maybe it could be obviously a 1 line a day page like I've set it up as, or it could be a gratitude log, it could be a daily highlight, like what was the most important thing or most special thing that happened in the day. It could be an exercise log where you list out the things that you did as part of a workout. It could be a space to set one key intention for the day, or one specific thing that you wanted to work on or make progress on, and then at the end of the day check it off to say that you did or didn't do it. Essentially, just because I or any other creator you see online has labeled a page in a specific way doesn't mean that that's how you have to use it. So I hope that when I share these plan with me videos, either in the giveaway journal or my own journal or for whatever else, even if it's not your primary reason for watching the video, I hope that you're finding layout structures that you can tweak and adjust to fit your own needs. Of course, we had some examples of how the one line a day page could be adjusted, but on this spread we're working on what I'm calling a play space. It's effectively just a very minimally decorated layout that has a lot of open space that our giveaway winner could use in any way they wanted to. As said, I wasn't too sure who this journal was going to, so I didn't really know what they were going to need, so I wanted to give them at least one spread per month that they could utilize for whatever else I hadn't set up for them. It could of course just end up being a brain dump space or a note space, but they could also go and draw in other structures to help them keep on top of whatever it is they're planning for. While the one line a day layout took about 5 minutes, the play space took 1, and then we're over the page and on to the weekly logs. For each of the months in the giveaway journal, I wanted to change up the style of the weekly logs, just so that the person who was using this notebook could get a feel for the different types of layouts they could use, find a style that works best for them. But because I know it can sometimes take a second to figure out if something does work for you, I wanted to have multiple iterations of each of the styles, so a themed style for each month. For March, we're going with a horizontal style layout where we have 4 days on the left hand side and then 3 on the right with a note space. Each of these just takes up a quarter of the page going from top to bottom and has a highlighted bar to say which day of the week it is, and the second line highlights just to add some more visual interest and some color to the page, and it also makes the sections a little bit more user-friendly in terms of readability. Although I'm not usually the kind of person to gravitate towards horizontal layouts, I do quite like this one. Oftentimes my task lists are a little bit too long to use a horizontal layout, thus I typically go for vertical styles. I still think there are merits with playing around with different styles, even if you do have a preference for one or the other. There's always the chance that we might surprise ourselves and find a different style that we quite like as well. This was also why that previously when I was doing monthly planning, I would keep each of the days of the month within the section for that month, which sometimes meant setting up a quote weekly log that only had 3 or 4 days. I just found that by having to set up a layout with a different number of days to the typical 7, it got me to kind of flex my creativity muscles a little bit more, thinking about different styles of layouts, different structures that I could use to just accommodate for that many days. I'd also do a similar thing sometimes where I'd combine the second to last week with the last couple of days of the month. So sometimes making a layout that had 8 days or more than that. By changing the requirements for the layout, it means that we have to think a little bit differently about how we utilize the space. And thus, by doing that kind of problem solving, we can find new styles of layouts that we could possibly incorporate into our regular weeks. Another aspect that I did for some visual interest was staggering the headers so they weren't all perfectly aligned with each other. This also meant that I could switch which sides the decorations were on, and thus still have balance on the page. For the decorations, I just picked any of the stickers that were kind of smaller, with the very small ones being kind of combined with like maybe 2 or 3 elements, and the kind of medium to small ones just being left as individual items. One of the things that I really appreciate about doing the same style of weekly, week upon week, is not only the fact that by using the same style, I don't have to come up with more styles, which takes more time, and then, thinking about it and creating the layouts and all of that, but by using the same style, you can very quickly see how practice makes better, or how practice makes us go faster. On the first iteration of doing this weekly log style, it took me about 16 minutes from first touch of the pen, whereas as we get to the kind of like 4th iteration of it, that one only took me 13 minutes. So my process just speeding up as I got more familiar with how the layout was styled, how the spacing looked on the page and such. This really just goes to show that if you want your journaling practice to go faster, find layouts that work well for you and use them time and time again. There's no shame in repeatedly using a layout that works well for you, especially if you're pinched for time or you want to try and save time with your journaling. And just because you're using the same style time and time again doesn't mean it has to look exactly the same. For instance, with these ones, yes, the general layout is the same, but by adding different pieces of decoration on each of the layouts, they still look different to each other. If you're thinking about this across multiple months, which, I like to use the same kind of theme for an entire month, so the same kind of stickers for each of these weeklies, but comparing this month to the next month, even if I went with the same style of layout, it would still end up feeling unique and different based on whatever decoration or other elements I was using, like changing up the lettering styles or the color palette or things like that. There are a lot of different ways that we can make our journal layouts our own and keep things fresh, even if the layout structure is still kind of samey all the time. One of my favorite ways to change up a layout, especially if it's using boxes that are all the same style like we have here, is just adjusting where the boxes are placed. So obviously we can't really move them around on the page so much, but positioning the notes section to be in the bottom left, the bottom right, the top left, the top right, that can still make the layout feel different. You just have to make sure that you don't get too comfortable with it being in one position and then move it and then start writing the wrong information in the wrong box. But I do typically use this tactic when it comes to making structured layouts, because you can make two layouts that have exactly the same information just feel different to each other by moving things around. As said, the weekly logs took between 13 to 16 minutes each to set up, but flipping on over and we're getting into the mid-month review. One of the things I was very intentional about when it came to setting up this journal is making sure that our giveaway winner had pre-sectioned out spaces that they could use for reflection. I know how powerful reflection can be when it's used intentionally, but I'm also aware that people don't necessarily know how to do it. So in terms of the structured sections in this notebook, these ones are the most structured that we have. While every other layout is kind of intended to be quite flexible in terms of how it's used, like the keeping track of instead of a habit tracker, 1 line a day instead of specifying it as a gratitude log or anything like that. In these ones, because people do typically struggle a little bit with reflection and review style things, I wanted it to feel just a little bit more instructional based on the headers that I gave each of the sections. This layout has 8 separate sections, so 4 on the left and 4 on the right, with some space down the bottom for the decorative stickers, and the aim of this one is to just do a mid-month check-in, thus the title mid-month review, and essentially see where are we at in the middle of the month, are things going well, what have we accomplished, what do we still need to work on. I mainly use these in relation to my goals and goal getting, what kind of actions do I need to take and what achievements have I had, but you can also use it for general life as well. Really the aim is just to help you do more of the stuff that you want to be doing, making progress on the things that you want to be making progress on. On the left-hand side, the 4 sections we have are achieved, incomplete, challenges, and learnings. So achieved is, what have you actually been able to accomplish? What wins do you have? What milestones have you hit? Whereas incomplete are things that either have been started and just aren't quite finished yet, or things that maybe we've neglected. I often find that the mid-month point is kind of where my motivation has slumped a little bit. The intentions that I started the month with and the motivation that I had to work on them is kind of waning a little bit. So this is an opportunity to take stock and kind of recommit to those things we wanted to do. The challenges section is a place to honor the fact that maybe some challenges have been faced. It's not a space to dwell on those challenges and be all like, woe is me, I can't do things because life is hard. Like, yes, sometimes life is hard and it does stop us from doing things. But by turning that into a negative Nelly space, we're not giving ourselves the credit for the fact that we can do things. We have done hard things. We can do hard things. We still want to honor the fact that challenges have been faced, but we don't want to let them hold us back from making future progress. The learning space is considering what our challenges and achievements and the progress we've made has taught us about ourselves as goal getters. And then on the right hand side of the layout, the 4 boxes we have are taking forward, leaving behind, priorities, and before April. It feels kind of silly to be saying before April when March still feels like it's a really far way away, but I mean it felt even sillier when I first wrote it back in November last year, so there is that. In terms of taking forward and leaving behind though, this is thinking about the tactics and strategies that are serving us in terms of our goal getting, productivity, whatever it is we want to work on. Which ones are we going to lean into more and which ones are we going to kind of park for now at least. The priorities list is for any of our goal actions that we want to make sure we're committed to work on for the rest of the month. And then the before April, or in any case before next month space, is more so just for anything else. I often use this for stuff that I want to do before the new month, but it's not necessarily related to any major projects or goals that I have going on. In terms of timing though, the mid-month check-in took about 14 minutes to set up. That time was certainly decreased because I used the same structure of layout for each of the months in this journal, mainly so that then our giveaway winner would have an expected layout. They know the structure going into it because they use it every single month. or at least hopefully they use it. I hope they're using it. But after this one, I set up 2 more weekly spreads for the next 2 weeks of the month, and then we're into the end of month review. This one has kind of a similar structure to the mid-month check-in. We're kind of checking in about the same kind of stuff, but the things that we'd write down on a layout like this are going to be a bit more final, a bit more summative. This one again has 8 sections, but the sections are slightly different. The ones that are comparable is that we have a challenge section again, so thinking about the challenges we've faced across the entire of the month, not just the first half. We also have another learning space for things that it's taught us, but then our achievement section has been swapped out for wins. You could think of these as kind of similar things. I do often treat them as similar things, but sometimes just changing up the wording, even if slightly like that, can get us to think about it in a different way. Rather than having an incomplete section, we have a memories box. So this is thinking about stuff that wasn't necessarily related to the goals or related to the projects we were working on, but other stuff that happened that we want to take note of. This could be fun events that we attended, special happenings, time with others, anything that feels like a memorable moment that we want to take stock of. And then the other sections, which are all being put on the right hand side, are a highlight space, needs, to try, and this month. The this month space in particular has been left kind of vague because I wanted the winner to be able to use it however they wanted to. So this could be, for instance, like media consumed this month. What books did they read? What movies did they watch? It could just be a little space to write out some journaling or do something similar. The highlight space is thinking about anything that was a real standout. That could be something like an event, or it could be a win, an occasion, an achievement, anything like that. Anything that was like a bright spot in the month. Needs and to try, though, are something that I typically use in my journal with relation to setting up my journal for the new month. Of course, in setting up this journal ahead of time for somebody, they don't really need to set things up for themselves next month, but maybe this could be a space to think about how they use that play space. Are there any projects in particular they want to work on in the next month? Do they have any upcoming events that need to be planned for, or things like that? So what kind of needs do they foresee in terms of things they want to organize or things they need to plan for, and what kind of things could they set up in their journal to try and help them with that? This one took about 12.5 minutes to set up, and I enjoyed adding some simple decoration to a couple of the boxes on this one. Although we had the decorative pieces kind of focused on the lower outer corners, I just thought it might be nice to add a few into the boxes as well, mainly just playing around with the hearts in the wins, memories, and highlight spaces. Now, when it comes to any kind of goal planning or project planning, I typically like to think on a quarterly basis, so every 3-month block, or technically every 13 weeks. But because this journal was being set up for somebody else, somebody who probably doesn't use cyclic planning, I'm just treating it as the first 3 months of the year being quarter 1. Again, with me being so big on reflection, I wanted them to have a quarter 1 review space in their journal as well. So I put that in between the pages for March and the setup for April. Because this one isn't specifically tied to March though, I didn't want it to have the same color palette or the same decorative style as what I'd used for the March pages, so instead I changed it up to use another set of stickers that I had, which have a bunch of different kind of motivational quotes and kind of encouraging messages. This is actually the same set that I used in my health journal because I need encouragement in that area, so I just swapped out the pink tombos for a couple of calligraphs in orange and blue to match with the orange and blue color palette the stickers had. The sections that we have on this one are kind of similar to some of the others we've seen on the previous reflection spaces, and that's mainly because honestly, when it comes to reflection, you don't need to have a huge suite or fleet of questions to ask yourself. You just need some that are kind of targeted and impactful, and a willingness to be honest with yourself while you respond to them. I think that we do definitely have a tendency to kind of get it in our minds that we have to have some kind of like complex or like beautifully worded question in order to really get insights about ourselves. And while those can be beneficial, and there are probably some very lovely, well-worded questions out there, oftentimes the simple ones with straightforward and honest answers are going to be more impactful for getting us where we want to go. On this one, the sections that we have are goals worked on and other projects, so just spaces to list those out from the quarter. We have a box for milestones and wins, so anything that felt like an achievement or an accomplishment. But as we're looking at this on a quarterly basis, not just a monthly one, thinking about the more standout items in that category, we have a box for challenges, but also a box for the approaches we had to challenges. Oftentimes we can dwell on the negative a little bit, like, oh, this happened and thus I didn't get anything done, or oh, XYZ meant that I couldn't do ABC. But it's a lot more empowering to think about how we responded to those things, and not necessarily in a way that is going to make us feel bad about ourselves. That's not the point of this exercise. It's more so just getting us to notice whether those approaches took us further from where we want to go or closer to where we want to go. It's that idea that we can't necessarily control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond, and some responses are going to be more positively impactful than others. On the right hand side though, the section we have at the top is for tactics that worked. So this is thinking about things that you tried or tested out with relation to getting things done, working on your goals and projects, and which ones in particular seem to be the most positively impactful. Like maybe you trialed getting up earlier, or maybe you trialed scheduling your day in advance. Maybe instead of writing out a laundry list of things that you need to do, you just started the day with 3 main tasks and worked through those before picking more. Whatever it is that you've tried and found to be successful in getting things done, those are the kind of things you would write in that box. Underneath this though, we have thoughts and musings. This one's just a kind of general space for any kind of notes or journaling. And then the 3 spaces underneath this are for Q2 ideas, maybe in terms of goals or projects, looking forward, and nervous about. It's always good to have things coming up that we're looking forward to, so that's just a little space to honor that. But it's also good to reflect that maybe sometimes the future is uncertain. We maybe have a little bit of apprehensivity or nervousness around the things that are coming up and how they're going to impact other areas that we're working on or other things in general. The time taken for the Q1 reflection was about 13 minutes, and notably this isn't something that I include in the giveaway journal every single month. It's just at the end of the quarter. But I do hope that our giveaway winner has found those reflection spaces useful, because I know that it's something that's like integral to my journaling practice. Flipping back so that we can flip through though, I think that these pages turned out really cute. I thought this was a really fun theme. I've been meaning to use these sticker sets for the longest time, so it was really nice to be able to use them in here. And also when I sent off the giveaway package, include a couple extras just in case they wanted to add some more decoration to any of the pages. If you wanted to see any of the other setups we have in this journal though, then the playlist on screen is the next one to check out. That one has all of the previously released monthly setups, the start of journal setup, which I think turned out really nice, and I kind of ended up using some of those layouts as inspiration for my journal. But click or tap on that one and I'll see you over there.